the same this week.
Good evening, can we come to order, please? Sorry. It's 7 o'clock, it's time for the March 27th, 2018 Board of Selectmen meeting. And we're down 2 members. Regrettably, our more attractive members, but if I hear any disagreement, if any of my colleagues here take offense and walk out, we won't have a quorum. So I'm going to just push on through and take our first item, public input, and our town clerk, Linda Hathaway, has some items of importance that she needs to bring to our attention. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind the people watching at home and folks here that we have a rabies clinic, vaccination clinic scheduled next Thursday at the Highway Barn, 6 to 8 p.m. For dogs and cats. So dog licenses are due April 17th, which is just a few weeks away. Voter registration for our annual town meeting election is also April 17th. We have an online voter registration, so you can do that too through the Secretary's site. Look at our website. But our dog licensing, we also have the capability to pay for the dog licenses online and upload your the rabies vaccination forms, so check out the website. Candidates night will be April 30th, town meeting is the 7th, and the election is May 15th. And we have there's somebody in every seat that's open for the election. I've gotten all the papers in, and we're working on certifying, but it looks like everybody's gonna be on there, and we have a contested school committee race.
Okay,
That's the only one. So that's my comment. Information's on the website, and more will be coming out.
Is our papers closed?
Yes, today.
Ah.
They're done, but I was able to certify or look at everybody's forms, and everybody's name will be on the ballot who turned in their papers.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it. And is that?
That's it. And the other thing is get your census forms in. We'll
Yes.
get those working on.
Now, is there anyone else here who has a matter of public input that they'd like to bring to the board's attention on a matter that's not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, I will proceed to Chair's comments, which are much in the way of our Madam Clerks. Just some announcements. First off, you might notice that I'm wearing a hat. This is the new Stow TV hat.
Oh, cool.
Going to be given out to everyone who works for Stow TV so that they can be recognized at tapings various places across the school district and across our town. This is the only bit of swag I've gotten in 4 years as being a selectman, but I'm on the LACAC as an actual member, not just a liaison, so we're all entitled. April 25th, as I know a number of our townspeople have been interested in, we are planning to deal with the marijuana regulations that will have to be passed or not passed based on the public or referendum that took place in 2016. Mr. Ryan has been our point person on this. He's been very diligent. And at this point, because of the tardiness in the cannabis control, issuing regulations, we're not ready to go forward with any proposal to put before the town. At this town meeting, the only thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be asking the town to approve an extension of the current moratorium that ends at the end of October and bring it out to the end of the year. That should give us enough time to submit whatever proposals we need to town meeting and to the fall town meeting and to the town at the ballot. Anything you'd like to add on that, Mr. Ryan? Nope. Thank you. We have the most talked about issue before the town for the last month and a half has been the community center rental policy. And our building inspector is working hard on that. We were originally going to review his recommendations tonight. We greatly appreciate the fact he's been before us 2 times before, but there's been a little wrinkle The town is checking into insurance requirements that have been suggested by the MIA. Is that correct, Mr. Martin?
Yes.
And we want to make sure that when we present to the town and we present to people who are interested in using the community center, that we have a very complete and full policy that will answer every question. Thank you, Mr. Martin, for continuing to work on that. And now these are rather, I would say, routine announcements. On Thursday, April 12th, at 11 a.m., rain or shine, there will be a topping off ceremony at Minuteman High School. The last beam will be raised to the top of the structure, and some of you may know that's where they put the little pine tree. So that'll be a ceremony that will take place on their site on at 11 a.m. on April 12th. Not for the first time, but certainly the last time, there will be a community housing fair on Thursday, April 5th, 2018, at the Stow Community Center. And it will deal with affordable housing opportunities in this area, Bolton, Boxboro, Devens, Hudson, Littleton, and Stow. Everyone is invited, and I even see that a light supper will be provided and kids are welcome. So you want to get that word out on that. Everyone's favorite and most important meeting of town government, Tri-Town, will be held next Wednesday, April 4th in Lancaster. I'm sure our clerk and liaison to the town, Tri-Town, Mr. Hawks, will have more to be said about that. But is there anything you'd like to add at this point, Mr. Clerk?
Well, I can shorten my liaison reports and just run over it real quickly. As you said, this is the first one, and that's been the first one in some months, due to scheduling problems and difficulties coordinating with school committee, etc. And this will highlight a new meeting facility in Lancaster. It's, for those of you who might want to go to these are public meetings, it's the Nashaway Meeting Room in the Prescott Building, 701 Main Street, Lancaster. The agenda is discussion of fiscal items, fiscal year 19 items from the school committee reports on capital, expected revenues, and expected allocations. I assume they mean by that assessments. Update from the school committee on the statement of interest, which has still not yet been voted, but will be shortly. New business and committees of correspondence is listed on there, Mr. Chairman. So those are the agenda items.
I'll address it at the agenda item might have to be added at liaison. Finally, and I appreciate everyone's patience, a lot of announcements tonight, but this is something that we're all very happy and proud of. The town of Stow was just awarded today $275,000 for the Carver Hill Orchard protections. Yes, I think that does deserve it, right? This was a grant from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Environmental Affairs. The funds will be made available through the state land grant program, which helps cities and towns protect land for conservation and passive recreation purposes. The grant is very important. It's very important to effectuate the purpose for which we expended money at last town meeting to secure a agricultural restriction on the Carver Hill orchards, and we're very, very pleased. And we want to thank all the people in the conservation department, of course the town administrator, and our legislators, as well as the governor's office for pushing this through. One of the ways we help Stow stay the way we always remember it.
Don't forget Stow Conservation Trust also, who's been raising money for them.
That's true. The Stow Conservation Trust is equally laudable, and they've been working hand in hand with the Stow Conservation Commission. So thank you for correcting me on that omission. I think I've warn everyone's patience thin with these announcements. I have a few more, but they can wait because they're not pressing. Having said that, I will now proceed to correspondence. Is there anything that my colleagues who are here tonight would like to bring to our attention in the correspondence file?
I have one, but I'm going to reserve it for liaison.
Just as you please, Mr. Clerk. So now that brings us to the joint appointment of the Randall Library Trustee with the Randall Library Trustees. I'd ask the Randall Library Trustees to step forward and to introduce themselves to their fellow townspeople.
Trustees? You want all of the trustees?
This is supposed to be a joint meeting.
It's supposed to be a joint meeting. You're just as entitled as we are to sit here.
Well, we are here to ask the board's approval.
Have a seat.
Come on up, have a seat. Brian hasn't bitten anybody in a long time. You can take it. It's a big table.
You're the reason.
Thank you for coming forward. Why don't you introduce yourself to your fellow townspeople?
Mary Ann Sharon,
Barbie Wolfenden.
Laura Reiner,
Bob Katz.
Maureen Bush.
Thank you all for coming
Wait a
tonight.
minute, we're missing one. Kathy.
I'm
is
sorry?
here. Kathy
O'Brien.
O'Brien is here too, not speaking.
You don't want to come forward?
No, thank you.
All right. Oh. I take it that means you've got
Issues.
issues talking, just issues talking. Well, thank you, those of you who have attended. We appreciate this. We know the Randall Library Trustee. We know from our liaison, Mr. Salvi, that you've been shorthanded, and we're glad to help you try and rectify that tonight.
Thank you.
Who would like to present the appointment tonight?
Well, I will. I'd like to ask your approval of the appointment of Lori Reiner for the remainder of the term as trustee.
Okay.
And this is Lori,
One second. Term till when?
till the next
Town election.
town election.
Okay. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that's on the record, Mr. Hawks. Yes, thank you. And Ms. Rayner, thank you very much for stepping forward. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself? You've already introduced yourself to your to the trustees.
Well, I'm recently retired, having been a reference librarian for the past 20 years or so. And I felt it was a good use of my talents to offer to the town to help out with the Randall Library Trustees.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
I
'Cause we
most
have your
recently-
resume,
yes.
nobody else does.
Most recently, I worked for 11 years at Wellesley College Library, and before that, I was at Brandeis, and before that at MIT,
In their libraries.
in the libraries, yes.
All right, well, it does seem to show some
It's a
qualifications.
step up for you.
No college kids, but high schools. But you were, as trustee, you're gonna be doing more policy and other matters, so we appreciate that. Do my colleagues have any questions for the applicant?
I suppose just a comment that I think we're quite lucky to get somebody with those qualifications that actually understands libraries
are.
and so on, so it's,
Very lucky.
It's, thank you very much for stepping forward.
Thank you.
Is it safe to assume that you have taken up papers at the upcoming election?
I have, and my signatures have been certified, so I'm going to be on the ballot for the
So,
1 year.
Yeah.
and since we heard the town clerk state before that this is not a contested election, unless you tick off a lot of people and do a write-in, this action we have tonight will give you a little bit of a head start instead of in being able to participate in the work of the trustees. So
Mhm.
I join my colleagues in thanking you for coming forward, even though it's only a few weeks early. It shows a lot of good intent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's nothing more to add to the comments of my colleagues. Was this the only applicant for this position?
Yes,
And my recollection is you wholeheartedly supported it.
absolutely. And she is filling out the remainder of another trustee who had to leave the board. So she will run again in for the full 3-year term in,
Well, actually, in this election, it's the unexpired term, so I think it's a 1 year.
yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Then a year from now, you get to do it
She
again.
gets-
Exactly, if
Yeah,
there's an
yeah.
opening, yes.
Well, I will now turn to the clerk. Mr. Clerk, do you have a motion for us?
Mr. Chairman, I move that in a joint vote with the trustees of the Randall Library, Laura Reiner be appointed to fill the position on the Randall Library Board of Trustees, effective from this date until May 2018 annual town election.
Second.
We have a motion and second. We've all had our questions and say, and the Randall Library Trustees have voted unanimously to support this applicant, correct?
Correct.
Then, seeing no further questions or comments, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? You guys vote too.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Wow, we don't usually get 7 people voting on anything we do, even shorthanded.
That's because there's only 5 of us.
We've
Come on,
set a
Don, you
record.
know that.
I know, we've set a record.
Well, I think we've detained you long enough, although Ms. Randall, would you stay on for one
Sure.
more agenda item?
Sure.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The joint public meeting as part of this agenda is convened, or dissolved.
Jeff will be back.
All right, we have 2 new people joining us. Madam Clerk, could you please introduce yourself for the record and for the town?
Jeff Smith, Hale High School Fund Trustee.
And this is an item, tonight, Ms. Rayner, seeing that she has so much time on her hand, is now going to help out on the Hale High School Fund Trustees. It's a very important fund for our town's young people. Madam Clerk, would you like to educate our town a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, I think Jeff actually was on the committee
Fine.
longer than I am, but I would just give it a little bit, was when the high school burned down, the Hale High School burned down in 1963, it was to try to determine where the funds could be spent, and so the town meeting actually voted to, in 1973, they constructed an addition to the Randall Memorial Library, and that was where the reference library monies were used. And so we went to the town meeting, voted, and we even went to court to get the will changed so that we could expend the funds for the library use instead of the high school, because we won't have a high school again in the town of Stow since we're part of the regional school district. So the probate court authorized the trustees to apply the income of the Hale High School Fund for the equipping and maintenance of the Hale reference room in the Randall Library, or as a contribution towards salary of a reference librarian or such other related expenses which may be incurred in setting up and maintaining such a room. So it's a committee of 5. We currently have 2 vacancies. Ray Frost and Wayne Fletcher were members, and they have since moved out of town and no longer able to participate. So Laura expressed some interest, and with her history of being a reference librarian and at Wellesley College, that's correct, right? I forget because I'm a Smithy, so Wellesley. Anyway, so we're glad to have her on board so that we can expend some of those funds for the reference
All right,
at Randall Library.
Without creating undue acrimony between the 7 sisters,
We're a little bit, we're not desperate, but we don't have a quorum at the moment. One of our members is in a care facility, not able to attend meetings, so we can't have a vote that produces a quorum, so we need help.
And we're glad to have her here with us.
And the librarian's waiting for the money.
For money.
any questions or comments from my
Just a
colleagues?
little off the mark, but you have an approximate amount that you have available.
The close of fiscal year 18, the assets were $663,299.77. The probate court finding says that we can spend the annual income, as Linda just read. Annual income's changes every year, 16, 18, more. I mean, that part of the probate court finding could be subject to interpretation about the annual income, but that's for another discussion. And also, I just looked at Bill, we had a significant development in 2017 in that we agreed to appoint the town treasurer as a co-custodian of these funds. So it's a good thing. We have audit oversight, and I think we have some bonding in place, so that should make you feel very secure. So, yeah, that was a good thing that happened last year.
Thank you.
That's right.
I suppose just one point of interest is, some people may not know about the Hale High School, but
Oh.
the Hale High School, if I recall correctly, turned into a fire station,
Correct.
which we recently abandoned.
Correct.
So anybody who was wondering where the old Hale High School was, it's the old fire station.
Correct. Correct.
So,
And I was 6 when that Hale School burned down, standing in my grandmother's yard, and remember the ashes floating through the air of the books. Okay, because I don't know that we saved any.
and if Jim Soda's right, it's actually still there, just buried.
Yes, it is.
That's true.
That is true.
One of the great things about living in a small town with a history like Stow's, you have such a history to remember, and good people like you and Mr. Ryan to remember it for us.
Yeah, so another bit of trivia, which as historian, Jeff and I, there's some of the previous trustees, both Mr. Frost and Fletcher and Jeff and myself are descendants of some of the earlier trustees.
It's a wonderful town in that regard, the history, I mean. Any questions for the applicant?
My final question would be, you do realize this is a life sentence, I mean, a life
Like
sentence
term.
term, it's unusual
I think I can bear the strain.
in that respect, almost everything else we do is 1 year or 3 years.
Right. Exactly.
I'm 30+ years with no adverse effects yet, so
Yeah,
things have worked
Take
out
that.
well for me.
Yeah,
So you say.
That's right, that's my assessment.
And we
right?
don't meet
Tom
very-
may know more than
and we don't meet
others.
very often, so, just wanna spend money.
Well, I'll take a motion then.
Mr. Chairman, on the recommendation of the Hale High School Fund trustees, I move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Laura Reiner as a Hale High School Fund trustee for life tenure.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Seeing no questions or comments, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for stepping forward twice tonight, Ms. Ryan.
Thank you.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Good luck.
And we can probably find other things for you to do too.
Oh, she's already an election worker,
Alright.
which I do need more.
Let's not be too greedy.
Yeah.
Now that brings us to something that is a very worthwhile endeavor. The only questions are the practicalities. Lighting for Autism Awareness Month. Is Mr. Whalen here? Is Melissa here? Thanks, Phil. I thought I saw you there. Why don't you come forward and introduce yourself to the town? Thank you, Tom.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. Thanks for taking the time tonight.
Oop, I got both of
You
them.
got both at once. I have laryngitis, so I'm gonna do my best.
Everybody has learned.
Yeah, so she's suffering from laryngitis, unfortunately, so all the nights. So thanks for taking the time to talk to us tonight, obviously.
Thank you for taking the time to bring this forward.
Yeah, so what we're proposing to do is light up the community building blue for the first week of August. I mean, of April. I keep saying August. Of April for, yeah, for the entire month if possible. We'd rather do that. So, and we'll tell you why.
And well, I'm just gonna give you a little history because a lot of people don't know what it's about. I apologize for my voice, but it's pretty near and dear to my heart. So April is known as Autism Awareness Month. April 2nd is called Light It Up Blue, and it's a worldwide event. It was actually just brought in, someone said the United Nations General Assembly resolution just put it in. So buildings and special places, the Eiffel Tower, all over the world show their support for autism awareness. and illuminate their buildings blue. Yeah, I do. My son actually made a presentation for me.
So things like, yeah, the Niagara Falls, as you can see, the Opera House in Sydney, I mean, it's a worldwide event. It's not.
Even the White House.
I'm not getting any,
So, the reason why we wanna do that is to start the conversation of what is autism and just to build our community. We wanna do, a little event in there. We're inviting, our Best Buddies group, which is a Neshoba program. We're inviting all of them to come out and show their support, and it's just to show support from age of birth to whatever age, and just to bring the community together. We've done this event in Maynard for about 8 or 9 years at the Clock Tower Place. My husband and I raised enough money with the Stow Lions or Maynard Lions?
Still lines.
Stow Lions, they actually gave us money to illuminate the bulbs in the top of Clock Tower Place.
So the tower light is blue for the month of April.
But we've been residents of Stowe for years, and we want it to be where we live. Our son is nonverbal, non-cognitive, with a seizure disorder and brain malformation. He's very high on the autism spectrum. We want to bring this to him once for everyone, so they can feel that community, that help for everyone, and know that there's a place. And we want it for all ages. We want these people to be a part of this town, and that includes Bolton and Lancaster as well, because Neshoba is a regional town for schools, so we want all school ages. So we invited, Best Buddies has already published it, and I didn't realize that the school had already published it on the front of their page, because we did rent out the inside already.
So we are having a function there, no matter what the results of tonight's meeting is.
I don't know.
Has the building department approved that?
I see no encumbrance at all.
Okay, and we already paid
I
ours.
was only.
We paid out of pocket for everything, so.
Before the next agenda. See, that's good, so we're in ahead of it.
Well, we might have cost you money, but let's move that, let's not talk about that.
So by doing this, it shows the town supports children and their future in this town. And it just, I don't know, it also, I said by lighting up blue shows local legislation that we are, that this cause is important to our community. So to me, like I said, it's very near and dear to my heart. We've done it in Maynard. I don't want to take people away from our community. I want to bring them into our community.
As we understand, it's very worthwhile.
Yeah.
I think everyone in Stowe knows that I have a daughter who's on the autism spectrum.
We brought the light.
But I don't think that's a conflict of a material financial point. Otherwise, actually, we would have a quorum if I had to.
No conflict, Ryan.
No conflict.
Move on.
I just want to make sure that we know that.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not a conflict, sometimes it's best to disclose. But before we go any further, we hear light up the Snow Community Center blue. Could you just tell us exactly what that means?
Yes.
We have your
Okay,
materials
so what we
here.
wanna do is, light up the exterior of the facility, okay? So we have these little solar-powered lights so nothing will be touching the building itself, I don't know if it's on. They'll stand away from the building and they'll just cast a light, blue light up
On the
to
brick
building.
walls.
Were you able to, can I ask Mr. Martin if he was, because I did get one earlier and I wasn't sure if he was able to.
I did get a couple pictures, I did put it up,
So it's
just temporarily got a picture, it didn't, I don't know that it's sort of a representation. And that was just close to the wall, and there's a couple other there that I actually did at my own house, just to give you the blue effect, so.
So
Is
they,
this just one light you can be using?
we'll do a few.
We're gonna try to surround a little bit of the building, so if we're driving by 117, you'll be able to see it cast a little blue. And really, it's,
They're solar.
and they're solar powered, so they're zero maintenance. They'll turn on and off automatically. I would install and take them out when the allotted time has been set. You know, if you said you can go for a month or you can go for, I will remove them and install them.
So you're requesting for the full month, but you'll take less?
Yes.
Okay. Again, I think it's a very worthwhile endeavor. I want to, though, ask our building inspector if there are any, as I said earlier, pragmatic concerns about allowing this.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns under any of the zoning provisions that are in place. Under section 3.8, general use regulations, there's no issue that I've read or see in the zoning to prohibit these from going up.
Now, there is a thought, and I'd like you to address it, and then I'll open this up to my colleagues. I appreciate their patience. There has been a thought, and I'm not, I'm not endorsing it or retracting it, but that if we do a month of blue, then in other cases for other charitable endeavors and worthwhile as they may be, we'll have to do a pink month, and then we'll have to do a purple month. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So we both looked them up. I looked up, one was muscular dystrophy, and it's only in New Zealand. There is nothing that is nationally in the legislation that's worldwide. So there is no lighted up pink. There is light up for your homes, but not for buildings. So there's the difference between that, and then I did look all of them up. There isn't official dates for those, as this is as I said, it is worldwide. And you actually have to you can register your home and your building on the Autism Speaks website. And I looked all of those other ones up that I could find, and there was very small, it's you can put your light on green for home for veterans, I think it was.
Yeah.
What was this
But
month?
never lighted up.
But never, it's not considered a lighted up. It's put a light on, put a light, so I did Google as many as I could find, and I couldn't find anything that was worldwide.
Anything you'd like to add on that
You
point,
can tell me
Mr. Rowland?
better, 'cause mine was
To mine, yeah. I would say, well, personally, it's a community center, right? What better place to represent and have people come and join and maybe spark a little conversation. If people see it blue, they may ask me or ask somebody in town, why is it blue? Well, what is autism? What is this? What is that? Now, on a personal basis, worst case scenario, if someone does ask in a year or two to do pink,
You have to
then
go through the
we'll have another
cell.
conversation about that, only because people might know more about cancer awareness than I do. I might ask the question rather than giving the answers, so I think it's kind of a nice thing for the community to enjoy the community center as a place to convene and support and explore and converse, so I think it's all positive.
Well, I've been monopolizing the floor, so I'm gonna turn this over to my colleagues. Do you have any questions or thoughts?
My thought on it would be, it's a great idea. I'm fully supportive of it. I think, unless you can convince me otherwise, I see more utility in having it for the week. I think it kind of intensifies, over a period of time, people are gonna say, oh yeah, there it is again. And to Mr. Burke's point, if we end up having, in the future, which we can't predict, multiple requests such as this, I think that this has a certain amount of precedential value in what you're asking us for tonight. And perhaps it would be easier for us to manage, no disparagement against what you're doing, if we limited it to the dates you suggested, April 1 through April 8. That would be I feel most comfortable with that.
Very good points, Ms. Roxy. I just want to make sure that everyone knows, it wasn't my point, it was a point I'd heard. I wanted to give you an opportunity to address it. Mr. Ryan?
No, that's a very good point too, because, my first gut reaction was no problem with a month. But at the same time, after some of the conversations started, it's like, well, how would you feel, and would it be, if we ended up in the future having to cut you back because there were other competing things that came
I
forward?
would take the month and be cut back,
Right.
if that's what you were willing to do, because it is Autism Awareness Month.
Right. And the thing is, though, I think, with what Mr. Hawks brought up, I think that might be a good way to start.
Okay.
And then, part of it is with the community center right now, we are trying to hash through any number of issues with rental policies, this, that, and the other thing. We've had a number of discussions, and I think we're gonna see how it goes. And I think it's a very worthwhile goal, and I'm definitely in favor of doing it. I would lean towards, let's start out small, and we'll see what happens. If nobody else has come forward in the next year or so, maybe we could expand it, but with the expectation that at some point it might have to be cut back, so. But I'd rather start small, if you know what I mean.
Would we represent next year for the following, would you like us to do that next year?
Well, I think that'll probably be one of the things that has to happen is, because part of it is we can't bind future boards.
Mhm.
So if you wanna do something this year, you know, now it'll set a precedent that most likely it would be approved in the future. Wouldn't, I think my colleagues would agree with that. But what we can't do is bind a future board for that.
Sure.
And, you know, again, where we are starting to work out some of the policies, procedures with the building, so, as long as Mr. Martin doesn't see any downside, any, you know, cost to the town or, you know, something like that, I'm definitely in favor of it.
So I think my colleagues have a very good point. Let's try it for a week, this year. That's no, it's no bar against you coming back for even longer next time. At some point, I don't think I wanna throw another wrinkle into Mr. Martin's, development of a policy, but at some point, it just might be, as simple as reserving a room, maybe even simpler. So, but for, that's for another day. What you've asked us to do today is to approve, the blue lighting of the community center, on April 2nd, and I think my colleagues are saying it should be for a week. And you'll take care of,
Yep, installation removal.
installation and removal.
Yep.
Mr. Hawks?
Just a question for a motion. The last line of your sentence suggested April 1 through April 8. Is that, are those the correct dates that you
I
would
would
want part of the
say-
motion?
Well, we were just discussing that, as he had written that April 2nd is actually the official lighted up blue day.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if we start, because I want it to be kind of a big, the community's gonna come out, we're gonna
Okay.
take a picture. Fire department's already planning on being there too, and so is the police department.
And Kate Hoganson.
And Kate Hogan, one of the representatives
So
from
you
Kate
want
Hogan's
April
on.
2 through.
2 through the 9th, would that be
Two
okay,
through
a Monday
nine.
to Monday?
Yeah, and the last, you mentioned that there would be several, how many lighting units are you talking about? No more than,
Well, it depends how much of I can do. No more than 12? No more than.
One of the issues that we have, just to bring up, is we don't have, these are, unless you have another way to mount the light that wouldn't be an encumbrance on people getting in and out of the building, we only have a few grass areas around the building where you could locate that light,
Mhm.
as opposed to pavement or concrete, so.
that would be the limiting factor.
If you'd like to, we could pick a number for maybe 5, and then I'll meet with Kevin down at the building, and we'll identify the locations, but again, we don't have a lot of grass to mount that light unless, you know.
How wide was that spread? It's tough to tell in the picture. How wide was that? Was it a six?
That was not
significant
that far
amount?
away from the building.
Okay, so if we pulled back a little bit, we'd be able to do a wider
Oh,
cast?
yeah, it would be wider, yes.
First time, let's take it baby steps, or
Yeah.
maybe not baby steps.
Can we compromise at 8? Is that a possibility?
I think that, and that's subject to the
Right.
discretion of the, you know, of the,
We'll leave it-
our building facilities manager. I think you guys are willing to work with him,
Of
he's
course.
willing to work with
Yeah.
you, so,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, we don't want it glowing either. We don't
Right.
want the neighbors like, we just
Right.
want a little bit of blue light. on
And
it.
that's,
That's
you know, if you put some up and it appears to be causing a problem, I expect that you'd be happy to move
Of
them.
course.
So,
Of course.
I'd be happy to leave that up to Mr. Martin's discretion, you know.
Before Mr. Hawks makes his motion, one last question, I'm sorry, it should have occurred to me earlier. How is this gonna be, how are these lights gonna be powered?
Solar,
Solar.
solar
Even at
power.
night?
So they go on at night and they go off automatically, so there's no power, yeah.
You did say that, and I just couldn't
He's
understand.
got one,
I
Brian.
have
Yeah,
one,
but-
Yeah,
I
but,
think.
it
Yeah,
would-
we gotta turn it on.
so that will store up the
See, I mean,
energy
that's not very
during the
bright.
day?
Yep, source from the sun, yep, and then it'll cast up
Mhm.
until it
There's
runs
no-
out, which is gonna be some time, but we haven't done the time.
Son of a
test.
gun.
Yep,
I-
technology.
Yes, no, I just wanted to, I
Not
wanted to make sure there are
that
no lines or wires going out, that's very reassuring, thank you. All right, Mr. Hawks, thank you for your patience, I will take a motion.
I'm gonna be solemn and like in choosing a number here. Mr. Chairman, I move to allow Kevin Whalen to install not more than 6 blue solar lights for Autism Awareness Month this April, for the period April 2 through 9.
Good number.
6.
Six. Would you be okay with 8, Don? Subject to approval by the building inspector.
I'll take that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
So we have a motion that has been amended, now we have a second. Is there any further discussion or comments? All right, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Please work with the building facilities manager. He's one of the most reasonable people in Sonoma. I don't think you'll have any
No,
problem.
I won't. All right, thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for your bringing forward. I hope you get better by Monday.
Yeah, Brian, good to see you. I know, me too.
About 100 people already saying they're coming, so me too.
Well,
Hopefully we'll see some of you there.
hopefully we see most of the town there.
Yes, we hope so, thank you.
And you'll be telling me I put too many people in.
I'll see you later.
No, I don't think so. That brings us to.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you.
That brings us to the appointment of the Veteran Service Officer. Maureen,
I
is he
told him
here?
he didn't need to be here.
Yeah. Joe Jacobs has agreed to sign on for another term as a town Veteran Service Officer. All right, done a good job so far. What do my colleagues think?
No, I've heard nothing to the contrary. I think he's had some challenges, maybe not as much this year as.
I'm content with the services he
Yeah.
provides
Yeah.
and nature of which he provides, and I think most people are.
And,
It's difficult to find them nowadays because they're part-time.
And it has to be a veteran.
It'd have to be, for me, a compelling reason not to.
Yeah, and for the very low price that we pay him for his part-time work, I think it's a great bargain.
Mr. Ryan?
I'm just curious, does he have to do any kind of continuing education to keep up on?
They're always doing continuing ed now. Back when I filled in for our World War II vet who had died, we had no replacement, I filled in, and then Don
I
replaced
did
me. We had
years.
like a couple of years, but now it's almost constant.
That's one of the reasons I
Get out.
decided not to do it. They wanted me to go to Boston and take 3-4 hour computer classes or something, what I used to just scratch out on periodic forms. But I think he does this elsewhere as well, so it's.
He's got a mentor from Hudson,
Yes.
who's full-time.
Yeah. So,
So I take it my colleagues do not feel the need to have Mr. Jacobs appear before us in person.
Nope, and,
Mr. Chairman, I move the Board of Selectmen appoint Joseph Jacobs, say reappoint, as the town's Veteran Services Officer to fill a one-year term expiring March 31, 2019.
Mr. Ryan, you had something you wanted to say?
oh, I was gonna say, the only interactions I've really had with Joe is when we arranged the meeting,
Oh,
the
walk,
veterans
the walk.
walking through town,
Yeah,
and I know he was very enthusiastic
Yeah.
about doing that, so.
and just note that this is one of the kind of outlier appointments in that it doesn't run July to July. It's by terms of its contract, March 31.
All right. I have a motion and it's been seconded. All those in favor of reappointing Mr. Jacobs as a Veteran Service Officer, say aye. Aye. That again is unanimous. All of these people, Ms. Rayner, and Mr. Jacobs and our next candidate, they're all gonna have to be sworn in, right?
Right. Correct. We'll send out appointment letters
Send out
tomorrow.
appointment letters.
Mhm.
I'm sure our town clerk will be her
We're
usual
gonna be
diligent
right on
self
top
in
of it.
following up. Which brings us to our next agenda item, and that's appointment to Open Space Committee. Mr. Mast, would you step forward and please introduce yourself to my colleagues in the town?
How you doing, Ben Mast?
Don Hawks.
Nice to meet you, Ben Mast.
Tom Ryan?
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for stepping forward. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in open space?
Well, I'm a resident of Stow for the last about decade and a half. Very interested in the outdoor space. So one of the things that drew my wife and I to this community was, well, the community itself, plus the community's sort of open space vision. And we've been really pleased with the way that has grown over time. And so this really has pushed my level of interest in this position. I understand there's an open position there. And so I also am willing to make the time commitment to do it as well. So see, I'm here, I'm ready to do it. And I think the other thing I would say is that I've spent a lot of time in our open space and our conservation parcels to date, as well as some of the surrounding towns. So I have a good understanding of what's available out there. So I wouldn't be starting from a blank slate. I really know what we got and really enjoy being out there. And then finally, I've got a willingness to learn, and I've met some of the Open Space Committee members already, and there's a tremendous amount of wisdom within that group. And I feel like they can teach me about their vision, about what the vision is of the committee, and that will help me actually, over time, have a positive impact to the vision of the Open Space Committee.
Well, thank you, very well said. Is Mr. Rowe here tonight? She's the chair of the OSC? I don't see her, but we do have her recommendation endorsing your application in our materials. Open space is very important, conserving it, maintaining it, and then maybe even expanding is very important to the town. Do my colleagues have any questions or thoughts for Mr. Mast?
So say thank you for stepping forward. It's nice to see a couple new faces
Yep.
coming forward.
Excited about it.
It's a good way to get to know some really good people in town. You know,
It's like beating a drum over and over again, but we hope to, we speak here not just to the folks in the room, but to a larger audience that follow. We do have a bit of a following, strangely enough, on Stow TV. That this type of government that we have, we try to run it on a tight ship, frugally, and we couldn't pay everybody that does all these things. We couldn't do half the things we do if we didn't have volunteers. It allows people to become a part of the community. And it's like a trial area too. Many folks who come into one area will find some other committee that they may move on to it later, or an elected position. So it's all great development, and we look forward to your services, so thank you. Chairman.
I can't match anything that's been said at this table regarding your application, so I'm not gonna try.
Mr. Chairman, on the recommendation of the Open Space Committee, I move to appoint Ben Mast, is it Ben or Benjamin?
I go by Ben, but it's Ben for me.
Ben Mast, to fill a vacancy on the Open Space Committee to serve the remainder of a 3-year term expiring June 30, 2020.
Second.
I have a motion second. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Gentlemen. Thanks for stepping up.
Appreciate it.
Our last candidate actually went for a twofer. You want to do a twofer?
See what else is up there.
Thank you.
Check the board on the way out. But I don't want to delay Mr. Taft any further. Our next item is one of our most worthwhile endeavors every year, and that's the Stow Clean-Up Day, and it's always organized and run by Mr. Sandy Taft. And Taft, thank you for coming, and thank you for doing this every year. Why don't you tell us just generally a little bit so that people watching at home have an idea what this is all about.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm actually a co-organizer with my wife, Tara Taft, and this will be our 10th year with the Stow Town Cleanup, so we're pretty excited to make the 10-year milestone. Last year, we tried to coordinate a little bit to help with PR, so we linked up with the town of Harvard and the town of Acton, and we've already reached out to them again just to kind of spread the word and try and get a broader participation that way. We continue to have a strong showing every year, 100+ people. We're fortunate to have Aubuchon's continue to donate gloves that Kevin started with us at True Value, or Ace Hardware. And we have Emma's Cafe that has been donating scones and pastries for the last few years. So what we'd like to do is make sure that we can continue to utilize the Lower Common, understanding that construction is going on down there. But the date is April 28th, and the time frame would be, that's a Saturday, from 7 to 12:30 in the morning, where individuals can come down and pick up bags and gloves and pastries if they'd like as well too. It's on the north side of the work, so it should be out of the area, and where we are is tucked closer down towards the entrance to the larger parking lot, towards the bank. So we're not further towards Red Acre Road, if you will, which is where I see some pipe has been laid down in that space. So it works very well. That space where Papagino's was, that parking area, people drive up there, and our table and material is right by our car, right by that end.
It's consistent where you've been right along.
Right, and in fact, our banner, which we have over the highway, it does say meeting point is the Lower Common, so I did confirm that. So Hopefully that will work, and we can coordinate with contractors as well too, but it's just over a month away by a day.
And the snow will be gone, you can guarantee it, right?
Not gonna guarantee anything here anymore with this weather, but yeah, we're looking good.
Couple of years it
in
was
terms
touch
of-
and go with you.
Yeah, that's right. We have now pushed this out to April 28th. I think that's where the other towns have been doing it, so that's likely to be our timeframe going forward.
And Mr. Chairman, just to show the town and cooperation, I'd like to point out, we have a lot of volunteer groups come in and do things, especially on the anniversary of the 10th iteration of this. I'd like to commend the Taft family, because this is a family event, organized event. It's been supported by many people.
Yes, it is.
But for all of its years, it has been presented to us here by Sandy and his wife. It's even higher level of dedication, I think, that one individual family sees a need, steps forward, and not just does it once or twice, but keeps at it. So kudos to you. I would just also point out, the town is very glad to cooperate with this, because it keeps our town's streets and entryways into our town that we're so proud of looking much better. And to that extent, the bags that are given out, filled by volunteers left on the side of the road, they're very distinctive yellow bags. And the town highway department cooperates by coming around the next day and picking up all those bags and disposing of them. So it's a town and individual effort. Jointly.
Thank you,
Right.
Mr. Hawes, those are good points, I'm sorry.
No, the highway department's been terrific to work with these past two.
And I just note the highway department has signed off on this application, so is the fire department, and the police department through Detective Sergeant Solis is just suggesting that volunteers at roadside will wear bright yellow or reflective clothing.
We're often encouraging that, and we try and steer people with young children to less busier parts of the town where we can. So we have a map that is a way to be strategic about where we place people.
You know, it's a wonderful event, very worthwhile. I'm fortunately going to be out of town that day, but I'm sure that the town will come out and support you, as it usually does, with great enthusiasm and numbers. Anything else?
One thing I was gonna say, I don't think it's a group that's been involved before, but I believe that, the rec department may actually have a number of the reflective vests, the inexpensive ones, that they may be able to loan you. You may wanna just check with Laura, and, I know they'll wanna get them back, but it may be just another way for another town department to be able to help out and improve safety.
Sure. No.
But I know they use them for the Run for the Woods, that a lot of the volunteers have the reflective vests. And she may have them, or it may actually be the folks who, not the Run for the Woods, the Stow Gobbler.
Stow Gobbler, yeah.
So my guess is that Laura Greeno probably has custody of them, but.
Thank you, great suggestion, Mr. Ryan. I think we're now ready for your motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move to permit Sandy Taft and his group of volunteers to conduct the annual Stow Clean-Up Day on Saturday, April 28, 2018, from 7 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., and to waive any fees associated with the hanging of the banner to advertise the event.
Second.
Any further questions or comments?
Just one comment, it goes along with some of what Don was saying, and not to drag this out, but we just had a new volunteer come in. You're doing your part, not as a part of a town committee, but working with the town, and it's very gratifying to see that. I very much appreciate it, but what it does is it really does show, to Don's point earlier, that there are a whole bunch of people in town that are contributing all in their ways. You're contributing quite a bit in what you do, but it's not actually a town appointment. You've taken it on yourself, and I very much appreciate it. But it's a lot of people doing a lot of things individually that makes the town a great place. So thanks.
Thank you. Seeing that, was a motion and it was seconded,
Yes.
I will now call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous, thank you. Thank the lovely wife Tara, and good luck.
Thank you very much.
And we're sorry, we just can't give you lower commons as we usually do.
Well, it really is pretty much the same space.
It will be okay, I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
Yeah, I know, but I'm sorry we can't extend that, because it will be under construction, but I understand you've worked it out with the shopping center, so that you can be on there. But I just feel badly that we can't give you the usual land that we do, but thank you for adjusting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this is, let's take advantage of volunteer night, isn't it?
Really?
We have another one here.
Well, you gentlemen are quite right, this is a town run by volunteers, we couldn't run it without them. And speaking of volunteers and worthwhile endeavors, the next item on the agenda, if I'm not mistaken, is the approval of the Run for the Woods event. The annual Run for the Woods event on May 20th, 2018. Mr. Coney is not from the SCT, so Mr. Ryan reminded me that I didn't properly credit earlier, but the Stow Conservation Trust has been the organizer of this event for several years. He's not going to be present at the meeting. Is that going to be a problem for any of my colleagues tonight?
No, sir.
No.
Okay.
We've had discussions with him other years. Certainly, the backup paperwork is impeccable on this. The actual, all of the details are laid out, the insurance liability is attached. The traffic plan worked out by Sergeant Solisi is very complete with the number of detail officers and shift officers. Everything is perfectly lined up. I have been,
It's a well-oiled machine at this point, they've been doing it so long, they know who to talk to, they get it lined up, and, as Don said, there's, an actual police traffic plan and action plan to go along with it, so.
I don't disagree with either of my colleagues, I just wanted to make sure I conferred with them before I took that step. It is unfortunate that we can't express our gratitude on this item as well to the Stow Conservation Trust in person tonight, but I will take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the use of public ways by the Stow Conservation Trust for the purpose of the Trust's annual Run for the Woods on Sunday, May 20, 2018, commencing at 7:30 a.m., provided they abide by the operational plan for traffic and routing devised by public safety officers and race director Ames Coney.
Second. I have a motion second. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Stop.
Aye.
That's unanimous. That brings us to the Boxboro Road land donation that we've been kicking around for some time. Would you like to come forward? You're from Toll Brothers?
Yes. My name's Tony Casapulla. Nice to meet you,
Thank you for coming.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, Tony.
Did we get a picture from the ribbon cutting yet?
No, that's right.
We owe you one, we'll give it to you tomorrow.
That's not a condition of.
Okay, that's when we'll take action.
Just remind you.
Thank you, Mr. Town Administrator. That was an important point. Mr. Kay, would you?
Beautiful place we're in.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kay, would you like to present your
So
requested land donation?
we were the original seller of the land that Regency at Stow resides at, asked us to provide the town with a sliver of land. It's approximately 23,000 square feet along the frontage of the property on Boxboro Road as a gift to the town for future widening. And thus brings me here. We had perfected the plan and we drew up the paperwork, and tonight is the night we're asking you to accept the donation of the land.
And this was on the last Springs Town meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't recall.
I believe it was.
Okay.
Didn't we,
What happened was, town council had reviewed the plan and found it insufficient, it did not show rights of way, so now Toll Brothers has gone back and revised the plan and it's been found acceptable, done title search and all the
Okay.
pieces of paper looked at.
Yes, I know, it was reviewed by town council, and, it needs to be on, this town meeting,
This will be on the warrant,
and that's why we had to do it tonight.
pretty much.
Okay.
Warrant closes Friday.
Warrant closes Friday.
Yes.
Another way of saying yes.
Yes.
And I think the members of the board are, especially the planning board, are familiar with this land donation. The previous owner of this property did want to increase safety along Boxboro Road, traffic safety, perhaps even pedestrian safety is very important, and it was very important to him, and he made sure that you followed through on that commitment, and we're grateful for you for following through. Any questions or comments from my colleagues?
Nope, I think it's one of the things, I think, actually kudos to Don for, wanting to make sure that that happened, because, he spent, I think, over 10 years on the planning board, so he knew the road, he drove the roads, he knew what, what would be beneficial to the town, and move forward with it, so it's gratifying. So I think it's a
I
very
don't know
good thing.
who's so creative as to come up with labeling it parcel X.
Leave it to the planners.
Okay.
X parcel.
Any motion, Mr. Chairman?
Hey, unless there are further questions or comments?
Nope, I know that the planning board's been looking at this also, and, it's, who would I be to say that we shouldn't take a piece of land that'll improve safety?
And I'll note that in August, the board took the first step towards accepting the article by voting to accept it and place an article. So this is the actual request for the article. So we are already on board is supporting
Yep.
this, but this is to effectuate that. Mr. Chairman.
I think we do have to sign something, though, tonight,
Yeah.
but that's what I was referring to earlier. Yes?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the selectmen place on the warrant for the 2018 annual town meeting an article to implement the donation of property by Toll Mass 1 LLC, known as Parcel X, to the town of Stow as an extension of the right-of-way on Boxboro Road.
Second.
Mr. Hawks, are you going to be making a second motion for the approval and acceptance, or that we sign the approval and acceptance?
Page 2. It's that,
That's just to put it on the warrant, if I didn't mishear you.
and to, yes, let me continue, and to authorize by our signatures the acceptance thereof.
That's what I think I heard you say.
Second again.
We have a motion and second. Is there any question by our administrative assistant what we're voting on? No? Seeing no question, I wanted to just make sure that she knew where we were. I will call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for coming forward, Ms. Kay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you for working with Dawn on that, too.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
This is the official one.
Oh, I've signed the non-official one.
Right.
Sorry.
You can take that one home and admire.
I think it's
your,
only
yeah.
official because Tom signed it first.
I think Linda actually has to
Notarize it.
notarize
Yeah.
that.
I'll take them downstairs and I'll put my signature on it and I'll come back. with
You want to
it.
check that date in the notarization?
Check the date.
It says 15th.
Oh, I'll fix that.
I think that's when we were gonna do it last time.
Yeah, I'll fix that. Is there only one? There's only one sheet? Okay. I'll fix that.
Thank you,
If
Lynn.
you want another one, you can come back. All right, we're moving quite along, quite a pace, moving along quite a pace. We've got, again, the discussion vote for the proposed marijuana moratorium. I addressed that in in my comments at the beginning of the meeting. That's not gonna be on tonight's agenda. It's going to be taken off. But the planning board will be bringing forward that moratorium. And the actual public hearing on the moratorium will be held on April 25th. And that's not about the marijuana questions or regulations. It'll just be on the moratorium itself, and that has to be held if we're going to put it on town meetings warrant. Any questions about that? Okay, and now that gets us to the highlight of this meeting and this year's budget planning. I'm going to turn it over now to our town administrator to tell us what he has
Rot.
well, no, not what he's wrought, what he has done to finalize all those preparations he's been so careful to keep us informed of
That
over
was
the
with a
last couple,
W, by the way.
over the last couple of months.
Appreciate it. So, this is the final recommended budget. I'm not gonna go through all of the matters that we went through in the previous 3 meetings. I'll give you the highlights, and from my perspective, they are all highlights, as far as I'm concerned. I think I had mentioned to you when we began the development of the budget that from my perspective, this year would be the year of the taxpayer. They certainly, as a constituency group, in my opinion, deserve the full attention of this budget, and from my modest perspective, they got it. And I want to thank, first of all the departments, the Neshoba Regional School District, because they're the big dog, because this has been the most cooperation that I've received, willing cooperation that I've received in my my early years are discounted because we were in the hole back then. Nothing came easily, but since that time. So I do deeply appreciate, and I'm grateful for much of what was offered by the departments to begin with. Others, with a little coaxing, came along. And so I want to let you know that what I'm proposing, and again, you have the latest, under expenditures, the budget that I'm proposing is $30,291,893, which is a 2.17% increase over the present year. If you back out the schools, the non-school budget is decreasing, and that's an actual decrease. This isn't smoke and mirrors or misdirection or any of the rest of it. A 1.5% decrease, or $178,000 down. The schools are going up 4.6%, a little over $800,000, so we get the mixed blended 2.71 because of the percentage of the total budget represented by the 2 schools. More specifically, though, Minuteman is going up the largest, almost 15.3%. But given the number, it's only about a $96,000 increase. The big increase is a little over $720,000 by Neshoba rather, but the percentage is much smaller than Minuteman. That's where we start. I'll go up top for the revenues, and I did want to spend a bit more time with regard to the free cash appropriation that I've plugged in. So I'm currently showing for FY19 $750,000 of free cash. A considerable increase over last year and years leading up to it, except there were 2 years when we had the Pompo School. As you know, I made a commitment to the Pompo School to buy down the annual debt for the Pompo Syndicate School. 1 year was $350 plus the 4 that I'd put in for capital, which is typically, and then there was another one of $400,000. So back-to-back years, I loaded up for different reasons, and this year I'm doing it for reducing the tax rate. But I'm proposing more specifically that all of the capital showing in my budget, which is just under $400,000 now, and so that you knew what the earlier requests were. At one point, they were over $1 million. Through discussions, the Capital Planning Committee, working with our departments and some chats that we have, agreed, for example, in the Highway Department, to push their rolling stock replacement schedule forward a year. The police did the same thing. What that did this year is it took the backhoe out at $150,000 and it took the cruiser out. The intent here is not to double up next year. The entire schedule, replacement schedule, gets pushed forward. Both departments are comfortable that with the hours that they have on both those vehicles, and I agree. Absent some unforeseen or extraordinary breakdown, they're well maintained and they should be able to survive that year without additional maintenance or repair. The Cemetery Commission decided to withdraw their request for 50 grand for the design of the prefab building that they're hopeful to get, so there's no request from them this year. So I'll take the 400,000 on the board for capital. All the capital will be funded by free cash. So that 400,000. I'm taking the additional 350,000 of free cash, and I've identified specific special articles that amount to $72 over 350,000. So I'm proposing taking the reserve fund, which is 70 out of free cash, the legal, which is 40. By the way, I was thinking I had boosted the legal earlier in the budget by 10 grand based on what I had known then for pending cases, what was going on, what was spent year to date and going forward, what I projected, and thought I might have to increase it more. But my latest estimates now, and assessment, where we are since that 2 months ago, and what we're doing going forward, I think we can make it under 40, which is 10 more than we had this year, 30. So I was thinking of going to 50, but I don't think we have to. In any event, it was 70 for this year, so a considerable reduction there on that. So I'm taking legal, road machinery, the EIP, and veterans benefits, and that totals $350,072. So we're just over the 750,000. So with that additional revenue, of course, that's that much less revenue for raise and appropriate, so that affects the tax rate. With the 2.17% expenditure increase, we've got reduced expenditures, those two collectively, you know, and then when you plug in the estimate that I've gotten from the assessors for next year's valuation, and that's going to, you know, change, but I don't know by how much. I don't think much. I think it's going to be close at the margin. So using that, I came up with what I would estimate just as a benchmark. It's not a formal one, but I think we're going to get close to reducing the tax rate by almost $1.
What's the bottom line there?
I'm about $20 a thousand from $20.98, just under $1 right now. That's pretty good. That's almost 5%, and that's so that I didn't want to half that. Oh, I didn't want to do this if I was just going to reduce it by a small degree. This is a change in kind, and it's almost 5%. Resets a baseline going forward. My last 2 years here, I hope to use that new baseline on the expenditure side and see what we can do to hold that growth. And I've got a couple of areas that next year I might also be looking at cutting. So I want to be able to leave my successor in the town with money in the bank, over $1 million of unused levy capacity, and a growth rate that's going to assist, I think, and we can maintain it and sustain it. Now, of course, I don't control the schools. In the end, I control 27% of the total budget. But in discussions this year, I think I had mentioned it earlier, the first time in my career where when I'd asked the school districts, and all 3 towns did, and they responded when they said, well, what are your needs? And we explained what I needed. Now, the 3 towns aren't in the same place, and we're in a bit preferred position financially and fiscally than the other 2, but all of us contributed. We spoke with the superintendent, and then the school committee and the superintendent and probably the finance subcommittee and all the rest of them dug in, and I'm pleased with this number. And so it started last year. I think it will continue to the degree they're able to, but I think we're working now, at least talking with one another, and so I'm optimistic for the future that with, you know, a little more closer attention in some areas and maintaining what we reset, we're going to be able to maintain a tax rate growth that's going to keep us from crowding that upper end of 25, with an expenditure rate that is more manageable than it has been with this reset, with a little extra work. So I'm pleased with it, and I'm pleased with everybody who contributed to it. So that's the free cash. The rest of it and we're closing on 1.9 million unused levy capacity with what just happened, which is 600-something thousand above where we were this year, which was over 1 million. Right. Now, it is true that the unused levy capacity is coming down in 2020 because when we retire the debt for the Hale School, of course, that annual debt payment is $744,402, and we get an annual payment from MSBA of $542, so we're going to net $201. But of course, the unused levy capacity comes down, But the debt payments come down, so we're gonna net 201 in any event, on it. So,
And Flag Hill comes off next year too, right?
Flag Hill, which is a much smaller number, but it does come off.
We'll take questions after the town administrator has had his say and my colleagues have had their say. Fair enough?
So the free cash is what I'm applying this year to make that substantive reduction in the tax rate, combined with in the non-school budget, we're actually cutting by 1.5% our total expenditures, and it's $178,000.
With spot level service, I mean, we're not losing bodies to do this.
No, we didn't, I'm not, there's no proposal here to cut the services. I don't believe it's necessary. We haven't cut anybody, haven't reduced any hours. There are a number of departments. We went to work this year in IT, property and casualty insurance, and other departments. We've substantially reduced, next year's budgets in several of those areas are gonna be less than this year by a noticeable amount. And it's because, for example, workers' comp audits. It's complicated work. You don't get much help from your insurer. You start taking the paperwork and you go back 3 years, you start working it on our experiential modification basis and all the rest. We've saved ourselves 20 grand. That, and it's taken some hard work, and it's, I'm not saying been painful, but it's, you know, we scrubbed in several other areas and started, you know, taking pieces out of expenses and the rest of it. But we've got departments that are gonna be net down from where they were in a noticeable place, but not sacrificing. And as I think I bragged about before, our public safety total, which is 3.3 million plus, it's 48% of the total non-school budget. They're 0.28% up. And that's huge, you know, and
It's huge because it's so small.
it's huge because they're 48% of our total. Is what
Yep,
the reason.
0.28, okay.
So, anyway, up top, that's, I think the free cash is, and for those who don't know, free cash is previous appropriations. That's been accumulated under the statute each year, gets certified once a year. And we were certified at 2,787, which is 600-something thousand above where we were last year. We were well above the 10% upper limit that our policy set. When we were upgraded to AAA, we agreed, there's 4 major financial policies that we have in place that were passed, the board signed, and one of them is we set 10% for stored assets at the upper end of our total expenditures. Even with everything I'm taking out, and I'm including another 80,000 for FY18, because I'm gonna put 50,000 in free cash towards the snow and ice deficit, which is just over 50 right now, and if we don't get any more, if there is any more, I guess I'd be asking the finance committee at the end of the year. You guys have been showing some, if you would apply that to whatever comes in, and if we don't have much, it'll be a push or close. And last July, at the special town meeting, we had 2 articles where I had plugged as a source of funding free cash. One was the Lake Boone Dam, and the other one was the septic system over at the library for shorter money. First one was 35, the other one turned out to be 5-something, which was, we were able to fund from the expense account on the facility management budget. Well, I booted that one. It's never happened in my 25 years with regard to free cash. I understood free cash to be that you couldn't encumber it or spend it until your certification comes through, which typically in September. So this was July. Well, it turns out, and maybe it was always the case, but I never faced it because we had always gone to special town meetings after the certification. But my accountant gleefully informed me that you can't even appropriate it. So I had to go to the highway department and say, look, can we take it from some of your expenses? I'll reimburse you come the annual town meeting, and that's what I'm gonna do here. So besides the 50 I'm putting in for snow and ice, I got 28 grand that will go to complete. So we started the inspection services under the contract and been paying with some expenses that they have on the highway. So I'll be asking for 28,000 plus or minus, which will replenish what they gave us from their expenses and give them the money to go forward. We've got until June now to complete, and so we'll get that all done. But so that'll be additional free cash, so another 80,000 from the 750. But with all of that, at basically what, 830,000 in free cash, we're gonna be at 9.36 of our, with stored assets as a blend, and so that's comfortable. In any event, I didn't wanna raise and appropriate where I didn't have to, and so we're gonna use free cash for that purpose too. Those will be for FY18, and then, with money left over from the reserve fund, I'm hopeful we'll be able to fill that out. Otherwise, it goes on the tax recap with regard to snow and ice, and it doesn't matter which way, but I prefer to clean it up in the year that it's in on that. So that's at the top side. So we basically have potentially available for revenues 8.64% more than we had this year, but as I said, that includes our unused levy capacity. We're obviously not gonna need any of that, and we're gonna be increasing our unused levy capacity to almost 1.9 for next year. So I'll go to the expenditure side. Down underneath the general municipal total budget, which are all our departments and townwide expenses. Our operating budget more technically. And as it shows here, it's only going up 1.14% under my budget to 6.875768 million. And as I said, we've got a number of cuts in there, and good number, it's the tightest number I've had in a long time under that. The schools, the 17,912,331 from the Schober, we knew a few weeks ago, it's 4.21 above the current assessment year. It's a good number. The 727,258 from Minuteman, which is 15.26, you know, it's mostly the debt that's being loaded up on the new high school. Our students haven't changed. We've got the same number of students next year as this year. So we're gonna live with that. I don't think we're fully loaded yet. I think we'll see for next year what comes up on the fully loaded, our portion of that fully loaded debt for the school project. I'm thinking in the end it's gonna be over 200,000 a year. So I think what we probably net on the 201, I think will be a little lower than what I'm spitballing it myself, but it'll be 200-something thousand a year when I think it's fully loaded up, our portion of the debt. But that's debt excluded because we did the same thing there that we've done with all the major projects. So it'll be budget neutral with regard to the over or under for Prop 2.5. Our debt service right now is pegged at $2,423,567, which is only a 3% increase. Raise and appropriate, so that portion of the budget we control, so above it's 1.14% increase overall townwide expenses in every department, their wages and expenses. We're going to show on the raise and appropriate, those 7 projects I showed you that I'm taking from free cash as a funding source, but next year's total will be 11.5% less than this year. That's a real number. And legal is down, veterans is down, you know, I went through that before, back when we've got some actual cuts there. And even with the increase on the EIP, we're down 11.56. The appropriate transfer is budget neutral, so there's both sides of the equation, there's nothing really to report there. Money coming that we already have from CPC and from wetlands and all the rest of it, you plug it in and I put it on the other side, it comes out. Capital articles is the other big reduction, 42% reduction in capital projects next year compared to this year, because we're just under $400,000, where this year it's $690,000, and all of it's coming out of free cash, so there'll be no taxes for capital. And we got no debt because we've got no project that we intend to get out. Tax recap items, I've plugged it at a number because we don't have the state budget yet, the state and county charges, but the significant figure in there we don't control, which is the county retirement, but even with that growth at over 8%, we're just under 1% down from this year, and that's really a function of where we were originally on the overlay reserve and on the recap, which is where the snow and ice went last year. So bottom line, 2.17%. Those are pretty much the highlights. I did beef the fuel account up from earlier on. I've gone from 65 to 80,000, and that's because year to date, with the prices of the commodities gone up, the usage because of the heavy winter, And to get through this year, I think that they may need a reserve fund transfer of maybe 9 to 10 grand, because of that. And because of that year-to-date, I beefed up by 15,000, that figure for next year. I think it's a good figure, we'll see. Next year, America becomes potentially the #1 gas producer and oil producer in the world, beating the Russians. That's how much, we're now selling to the Europeans, you know? We're cutting them off at the pass, you know, that Ukrainian pipeline, we're gonna dry that up. Just kidding, folks. I mean, they got investment in the Ukrainian pipeline from the Russians, but, you know.
Yes.
Timely.
Huh?
Timely.
I'd talk about OPEB, because I know that's an interesting topic for many folks, and I think, as I said to you, that I'm beefing up to 100,000, the OPEB for next year, and that's basically 41% of the total OPEB charge to us, that portion of our total health care, which is retirees, spouses, widowers. I trend that and have been. I mean, the interesting part, if you look at the actuarials, and they, you know, 30 years out was 6.8 million, so start putting as much as you can into OPEB, but I don't necessarily subscribe to that approach. I will say this to you. I've looked back 30 years. If we were making those estimates for OPEB 30 years ago, in $3 million unfunded liability, we've paid every year for the last 30 years. You know? Now, it's a strict liability because it's considered, strict liability would, and the reason they worry about it is because you're contracted, presumably. That's more under pension than health care, because health care programs can change and we have the authority to make adjustments. And because we're tied to lookalikes for the GIC at the state.
What do you mean lookalikes?
So,
Oh, I see.
we were
Lookalike health
authorized, they
plans.
changed the law to allow us to start trying to match up, because they've been cutting there. In fact, we now are going to be able to get a cut in our program, and we'll be talking with the employees and the union reps coming up to actually get a reduction of where we are. But what I'm saying to you is that I understand and appreciate the principle of the unfunded liability. All I will say to you is that, and to a lesser degree, you know, none of our services are funded beyond the year that we're in. Now, it's not the same as saying you owe a contract. So pension, strict liability, courts have said that's a contract, you pay that if there's nobody left to pay anything else. Healthcare is not the same, because there is the understanding that adjustments can be made there. Understand that 6.8 million 30 years from now, but that's taking every year. We're at 241,000 right now. I've been trending it for 15 years. I look back and, you know, if we looked at what was the unfunded liability 20 years ago, and we decided that we wanted to take the approach of let's stop pushing as much as we can, all I will tell you is 20 years later, we're paying every year as we go. We're pre-funding now 100, which is 41% of what we owe at 242. And my feeling at 40%, if you did that each year, I would feel comfortable with that at 40%. Having said that, you know, I'm talking with I'm most worried about the people that rate our bonds. And so I now have from them everything they've written about it, S&P, and I'm talking with their Boston office, which is their major office, about what they think going forward. I've had our auditor weigh in, I've got the Gatsby rules, and I'm going through all of this, but I'm not panicked here. And I think, you know, beginning to put the money in at that percentage, I think for our total is a good start, and by next year I'll have something to bless as a policy and review and the rest. And the reason when people can disagree on this, all I'm saying is.
We're gonna have that, we've already
Yeah.
decided at our joint boards meeting to have that larger discussion on another time. Any more thoughts or any more educating us on this year's budget?
I think those are all the significant figures that I have.
All right, do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Mr. Ryan?
I just had one question really, as far as the OPEB. If I understand it right, basically it says that if the town of Stow shut down tomorrow, we're gonna owe all this money over the next 30 years. Is that basically?
Well, Mark
what
can
is-
probably technically correct. My understanding is they take what you're now paying as a portion of your total health care, that which is attributable to your retirees.
Yep.
They then project forward over 30 years as though none of that's being paid.
Right.
And so, and 30 years out was some actuarial number they come up with. I don't know why it's 30, but again, Mark will tell you. But my understanding is that it's that portion attributable to it, and then there's multipliers as to the portion growing and all the rest of it. And so we're at 6.8 30 years out, and that's presuming that none of it gets, it's unfunded liability.
Right, Town of Stow shuts down tomorrow. There's no income coming in at anywhere, but this is what we're gonna owe all our retirees going out for the next 30 years because it's already contracted and there's no income, so we have to.
Except we pay it next year and the bill, goes into the.
Right.
But in any event.
Yeah,
it's-
OPEB requires a more lengthy discussion, I think we have time for tonight. It is something that the FinCom has asked us to put on for a separate item, just for a general discussion. Unfortunately, that kind of thinking requires you to be able to keep two contradictory thoughts in your head at the same time about the same subject. It's gonna be a challenge for everyone, but we've committed to have that discussion sometime over the next 6 months. Any
Yeah,
other
I'd like just time to draft up a policy based on the sources that I'm talking about, and then I'll at least share that with others, and they'll give us a starting point to discuss pluses and minuses. I wouldn't be offended if the agreement was to pay more, it's not, you know what I mean? I'm doing what I think at the moment that I think is sufficient in the near term, and I'll get all the information that I can and come up with an offer, and then we can talk about it, but, that's a decision that others can make if they'd like.
It's a policy-based decision, but one we'll address going forward at another time. Any other questions or comments for our town administrator upon this year's budget?
Yeah, it's just a great job, and, I expect that, because we are pushing some stuff out, the loader and the cruiser and so on, that we'll see a bump up in those line items, or, in the capital expenses next year, but the thing is, over the long run, we'll just be getting another year out of our equipment, which is always a good thing. It'll save us some money over the long haul.
We're extending the replacement of the rolling stock schedule.
Yeah.
Which is,
Yeah, it's all good, but.
Mr. Hawks?
Yeah, you've certainly, wrung the sponge out so much that you couldn't wipe the blackboard with it anymore.
I'm not sure. I'm not even.
It's a compliment.
It's a
Is that a good thing or
It's a
bad
good
thing?
thing.
Okay,
It's a good
right.
thing. The sponge isn't dripping water all over the place, you've wrung it out dry.
Yeah.
But I particularly want to pick up on one part of what you've said, and that is the unprecedented, it's certainly in my term and 4 times as long that you've been doing it as I've been here, for the Neshoba District Committee, and the way it's constituted and now, and the way it's been working together collaboratively. I've been to a number of meetings, there's been some very heated discussions up there. It isn't easy stuff, and especially when one size doesn't fit all. Stow is not Lancaster, or Bolton. And other years we've been on kind of the short end of the stick, but there are some very tough decisions, and they have all of those members I have seen sitting there are sticking close to the party line, and I think some more reluctantly than others will agree that this was the best budget that they could get, and a number of 2.4% for increase from Neshoba. I remember the days we used to get double digits, and then we were feeling good at 7 or 8. This was a lot of not just sharp pencils, but creative thinking and painful. So kudos to Mark Jones and all of his colleagues out there. Keep up the good work.
Seeing no questions or further questions or comments from my colleagues, and also speaking of committed and dedicated volunteers, we have a very engaged iteration of the Finance Committee this year, and they're trying to learn more about the budget. I know that the town administrator, I've seen the emails between the town administrator and the FinCom on certain requests or inquiries that they've made. If it's acceptable to town administrator, I'd like to see if the members of the finance committee who've shown up tonight have any questions that they'd like to ask the town administrator. Even though you might not agree with all his decisions, at least do you understand them?
Absolutely. I want to applaud the town administrator and the rest of the select board for the work that they've done. You sold yourself short on the expenses. You said 2.71 and it's 2.17.
Oh, I misspoke.
You transposed the numbers, so it's, it's impressive what you've done, and I think if I can speak for the FinCom, I think we're very happy and appreciate the hard work that you've done and the rest of the town boards, and especially being responsive to us with our questions and our concerns, and we thank you for all your dedication, and to the Board of Selectmen, and specifically to Brian, who he shows up to almost every one of our finance committee meetings, so really helps to get his context from the schools, which he's been on, and of course he's been on the FinCom too, and then as the Selectmen.
I got nothing better to do.
It's important for us as we learn this, so. You guys have any thoughts?
We all work hard. Everyone on this board, everyone in the town who volunteers at time works hard and they try to do their best.
I agree.
You're gonna have a public hearing, would you like to announce your public hearing?
Yes, we'll have a public hearing on Tuesday the 3rd at 7, right here, so
On the budget.
on the budget, yep.
And that'll be a chance for members of the town to come in and before town meeting and give you their opinions and thoughts on the budget we vote tonight.
Exactly. We're looking forward to it.
And I'll be forwarding that to you in the morning.
The
I
vote.
typically don't like giving it to anybody until they've, we've had this because,
We understand.
so
You're
in
probably
the
looking
morning
at-
I'll forward it to you, and the narrative, though I asked that a few pages of a few copies of the narrative be made up, but I'll give you both in the morning. But I'll send them to you and you can distribute to the members.
Mr. Chairman, I just wonder if our FinCom Chairman Emeritus has anything to say tonight.
Well, I'll just echo what's been said, and it's a tremendous accomplishment, first I've seen in this or any other government to take a step, reduce expenses, it's very impressive. Also, just as you said, the spirit of cooperation, I imagine in this building, it wasn't easy for you to get done, what you did. Doesn't mean they weren't cooperative, but it's,
Some you had to bring along.
that's something that we don't necessarily see, which, but, everyone that we try to talk to is responsive, and it's just an excellent job, and as you said, including the schools, we're getting much more cooperation than we ever got. Mark Jones done a tremendous job, really leading that and opening that up over the last few years. Brooke has been great when she's come in, and as you said, actually, well, what do you need? What can you do? And these are different.
They mean it when they say it now.
And they came through, so really across the board, very happy with the result.
Plaudits for everyone.
Make a motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hawks.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the FY 2019 budget for the town of Stow as prepared by the town administrator, William Wrigley.
Can we put a date on that? Is this the correct date? Or do you have a date for the budget you circulated electronically?
No, I think tonight's date's fine. Here's the other thing, I've got the accountant scrubbing some numbers, so there may, and in fact, some information came to me since I sent this to you, so by a few $100s, there's something, so I would just.
We gotta vote something tonight.
Just vote the budget presented, the number
As
isn't.
presented.
Understood, but do we have a way of tying it to one of the spreadsheets that you, do you have a date on one of those?
This one is dated.
Is this the one you circulated?
Huh? 3/21.
That's, this one is dated 3/23.
Didn't change.
Well, I think that's the print date. So Bill's looking at the same thing.
How about this, I'll make it easy on it. The budget that shows $30,291,893.
So moved.
Second.
I just wanted to make sure that we were clear what we were doing. You got that, Maureen?
Mm-hmm.
All right, there's been a motion and it's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, and thank you. There's been a lot of plaudits going around. There's a lot of plaudits you should go around. Thank you for everyone who made this budget proposal work. It'll go before the town and public hearing next week, and it'll go before the town at our annual town meeting. And Mr. Town Administrator, especially you, masterful job. Thank you for your hard work and your dedication, and especially keeping the board informed every step of the way.
You see any reason why he should?
I was just gonna ask if there was, I think he deserves a trip back to the friendly town.
It's Castle Rock now.
Whatever Stephen King calls
Hulu's
it.
coming out with it in August.
Say that again?
I know Stephen King's
Oh, yeah.
novels, so that fictitious, I'm not a Stephen King fan, though, but there's a place in Maine that he's from Maine, it's called Castle Rock, and one of his horror was filmed in Orange. Over the summer.
At the VFW? At the VFW?
What did Brian say? I know it was him, whatever it was.
No, it wasn't.
Tom.
At the VFW?
No, I belong to the Legion.
All right, fine.
Yeah, his trust in me is amazing. That brings us to liaison reports. Do my colleagues have anything they'd like to bring to their colleagues in the town's attention in that regard? Mr. Ryan?
Got a couple things. One, anybody, I think people have heard in the past about the youth police and youth police academy that they've run for the last few years. Anybody who's interested in that should check out the Stow webpage, but that's gonna be running for kids, students in grades 6, 7, and 8, from July 16th to 20th at the fire department, down at the Pompo Community Center Fire Station. I believe sign-up is free, and there's actually a deadline to sign up of April 15th. And I do believe that it's first come, first served, so anybody who's interested in that, rumor is it's a great old time.
I've heard good things about
Yeah.
the program they're running for adults right now.
Yep.
Yes, it's great. I'm taking that class, it's awesome.
Oh, good.
Yep.
I have
Well,
a good shot, too.
yes, are you ready to tase any of us?
No, yeah, no.
Don't tease me, bro.
Well, we'll be worried about that. And speaking of public safety, we have an email from our energy maven extraordinaire, Arnie Epstein, and he told us that on an email dated March 22nd, that at the Hudson Light and Power meeting, the board meeting, Brian Choquette, the general manager of Hudson Light and Power, extended his thanks to the Stowe Highway, Fire, and Police Departments for their help during the past storm, and he wanted us to pass this along to the departments. Brian is very grateful for the support he received.
And I know that the police, fire, and highway department are very thankful for the help that they received from Hudson Light and Power, so it's a two-way street.
Mr. Hawks?
Just briefly, I've attended 2 of the last 3, I guess, Neshoba school committee meetings. At the time when they were, as I previously alluded to, really struggling with some items to try to stay within the number that the bill has reflected in the 4.2% increase being attainable. And for the sake of the Finance Committee, I will say, some of them may want to come to our OPEB discussion, because there was a lot of very heated and differing opinions on OPEB there. And certainly when we talk about our obligation is dwarfed by anything that you would hear there. And they agonized, spent, I think, probably 40 minutes discussing the final adjustment. And originally, their original number was gonna be $50,000 contribution this year. And they struggled to come to a split vote decision to increase it from 50 to 75,000. So they have many of the same structures, but magnified manyfold. So this is something that has been thrust upon us that is not going away. So I do look forward to our own discussions and probably taking it on a roadshow to the Tri-Town as well. So that's about it. Thank you.
I've just got one other thing.
Certainly, Mr. Ryan.
I think, it's really more of a, I probably should have brought it up at the beginning during announcements, but I think people have probably seen today that the highway department is starting to clean up some of the debris by the side of the roads. It's obviously going to take them quite a long time. At this point, to my knowledge, people should be aware that there is no plan to take debris that is on people's private property. Please do not, under any circumstances, drag it to the side of the road and expect it to be picked up. The highway department has enough to do with the stuff that has fallen in the streets, and at this point, they're gonna be spending the next month or two just cleaning up what belongs to the town and to try to make sure that the streets stay safe. So please, please don't try to increase their workload. As a matter of fact, if you see small pieces of brush and stuff that you can take care of, please do so. Don't try to start dragging logs, off the side of the logs off the side of the road or something. But if you've got small things that you can just take care of, it'll be a big help to just get it off the road, and it'll be cleaned up that much faster.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Strong point, and one that needed to be made. I'll be brief. The LACAC met tonight. They wanted to engage.
For the uninitiated, Mr. Burke, could you?
So you got the hat?
Stow TV. As I was going to address it in a roundabout way. Yes, the LACAC is Stow TV, or it's the committee that oversees Stow TV, and they're meeting tonight, or they have met tonight, to do a bunch of stuff, but mostly engage a new executive director to replace Ann Van Tyne. Unfortunately, I guess they didn't want my input, so they scheduled tonight at the Selectmen's meeting. But they did give me this cool hat, but it comes out of raise and transfer, not raise and appropriate. The cemetery committee is meeting. I'm trying to suggest to them ways to go forward to get their capital structure needs met without breaking the capital planning budget. And FinCom, let me just say, everyone on this board liaisons exceptionally well and diligently with their committees. We're always there for you guys to work with us, that we can all work collaboratively, because even though we're volunteers that run this town, we all work together so that we can get the best results for our fellow townspeople. And that's how I'd like to end this meeting, unless somebody wants to say anything different. Although I am sorry we didn't hear about Lake Boone tonight. But
Back at full level.
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
I don't think he got that in time.
Yeah, it was before the motion.
All in favor? That's unanimous consent. Good night, everyone. Thank you.